hosting us and Emery for setting this up. So my name is Ian Markoff. I write diverse dark fantasy about damaged heroes and perfect villains. And like Emery said, the story I'm going to be reading is The Deadbringer. So quick, just summary of what the book's about. All is not well in the land of Moenda. In the south, the Ascendancy has positioned itself as a dominant power by exploiting the people's fear of the unknown, twisting that fear into a campaign of genocide against the Deadbringers, a race capable of summoning souls and reanimating the dead. But in the great northern city of Opulense, Kira Vidal, the young Deadbringer, has escaped the fate of the rest of his kind, living in hiding with his uncle Utao, plying their trade as morticians. So now, without further ado, I'm going to read a chapter that's a little bit further in, so that's why I wanted to give you a little summary. All right. This is chapter 8, A Chance Encounter. Kira stood in front of the plain white door. He blinked, and curls of white paint began slowly peeling away in jagged, disjointed patterns. His mind conjured images of someone trying desperately to claw a way out, and he tore his eyes away with a shudder. Looking around, he saw that he stood in a narrow, misshapen hallway that seemed to have no end. He began to walk, but after some time realized that, despite the feeling of motion, he was unable to move away from the white door. Standing in silence, a thought pierced his foggy mind. This is a dream. Desperate, he closed his eyes, pushed out the image of the door and hallway, and envisioned himself awake, and realized, with a start, that he did not know where awake was. Uncle? Where am I? Where are you? Did we go somewhere? Panicking, he opened his eyes and saw that he was no longer in the hallway. Instead, he found himself in a large square room that was empty save for a single row of ornate gilt-framed paintings and mirrors lining each of the 4 walls. He caught sight of his reflection in one of the mirrors and saw that he was masked and garbed in the attire he would typically wear to summon the dead. A sudden sensation of familiarity, of something urgent, pricked at his mind, but was quickly replaced with an unwilling curiosity as he was pulled away by an overwhelming need to look at the paintings. Morbid fascination took him from one to the next. The images were grotesque, debaucherous, and though each wall showcased a different focus, all were nonetheless joined by a common theme: torture. Torture of mind, torture of body, torture of soul. A cold numbness plagued his side, and again he found his mind wandering as if he were desperately trying to recall something. Then a gilt frame glinted, and Kira refocused its attention on the painting before him, a tableau of a bound, naked man being pulled apart by 2 horses. He wondered if the gruesome image had brought about the unpleasant sensation in his side. The man's anguished look contrasted sharply with the ecstatic grins of the riders mounted atop the horses. To his horror, the skin around the naked man's waist and limbs slowly began to tear as the horses and the riders moved further apart. The painting was alive. It won't be long now. A deep, powerful voice like velvet smoke cut through the fog in Kira's mind and echoed painfully throughout the room. The man will soon be dead, and the riders will have their fill. Kira stiffened, his heart racing, and turned in the direction of the voice. He was surprised to discover that it belonged to a woman taller than him. Her voice pressed on his mind, hypnotizing him. It has been a long time since I had a guest. Kira tried to focus. For some reason, he could not make out her features, except for her intense, nearly black eyes. Is this a dream? Kira asked. For most, yes. But for you, not quite, said the woman. There was a slurred accent to the woman's speech that reminded Kira of someone, though of whom he could not recall. What does that mean, not quite? Asked Kira. The woman circled around Kira as she spoke, her eyes focusing intently on his side. Individuals who harbor unfulfilled desires find their way to my hallway. Depending on what they seek, they may be offered the opportunity to fulfill that impossibility they crave. Kira's cheeks flushed underneath his mask. He was grateful that his features were concealed. But being fulfilled in dreams isn't the same as finding fulfillment in the waking world, he replied stoutly. The woman arched a pierced brow. True, Some, not all but some, find reality distasteful and seek escape in dreams instead of embracing the waking world they live in. But more to the point, this room is cut off from the hallway and belongs specifically to me. No one has ever entered this room until now. She continued circling Kira, peering at him as if he was some oddity. Alarmed, Kira retreated to one of the walls, putting his back against it to prevent the woman from walking around him. Amusement filled her voice. The paintings on the wall are insights into some of the more entertaining desires. Kira wondered if he was being mocked. Refusing to look at the paintings, he angrily asked, "Do these kinds of desires entertain you?" The woman stopped pacing, looked down at him with dark, contemplative eyes. Everyone, including you, restrains infinite longings they feel ashamed of. In some, those desires are violent, and mutual satisfaction through intimacy is nothing more than an illusion. Often, it escapes into their lives, destroying them. But it is an abyss to which they have willingly submitted, although she pointed with one claw-wreathed finger to the picture of a man being torn apart by the horses. It often drags in others, not willing. The woman moved closer until she was only an arm's length away. Her dark eyes fell directly on Kira, who trembled beneath his mask. "So now I ask, what are you seeking?" Her voice rang like black metal, and the question she posed echoed in Kira's ears, while sudden pain in his side, sharp and deep, caused his knees to buckle and his vision to go dark. Again, a memory pricked at the edge of his mind, but disappeared before he could take hold of it. Finally, pain subsiding, he straightened up and found that the woman was gone, and he was in front of another door, this one made of rusted metal. Shadows flickered madly across its surface. Kira turned and found that the shadows came from a solitary candle burning brightly on a table in the middle of the room. In contrast to the last, this room was smaller, and the walls were completely barren, but it was dim, and the floor was covered with barely visible objects. Kira stepped forward, but something crunched under his boot, causing him to jump back in alarm. He stooped to touch a long piece of what appeared to be porcelain. As his eyes traveled up its length, he realized that he was looking at joints, then a body, a face, and two shiny glass-bead eyes. "A doll!" he exclaimed. He quickly removed his gloves, dropped to his knees, and eagerly reached out to touch the smooth, cold face looking lifelessly back at him. Even through the flickering shadows, he could make out the perfect ringlets, the delicate features of her face, the strong curves of her naked, lifelike body. She was softly beautiful. He blushed profusely as he examined her construction, but frustration soon trumped all other emotions. He could normally see so well in the dark, but the dim lighting seemed to be made of a living darkness that blinded him, making it difficult to determine how the doll had been put together. The woman's voice called out from the shadows, "You know what she is, don't you?" Not receiving an answer, she rephrased the question, her impatience becoming clear. "Why are you so enthused with my pets?" "Did you make her?" asked Kira. The words blurted out of his mouth before he could stop them. He had never met anyone who knew how to make a doll. At that moment, nothing else mattered. Her voice seemed curious now as she asked, "How important is that answer to you?" "Very," thought Kira, but he realized that the response would make him seem desperate and vulnerable. Instead, he asked the other question that was demanding to be heard. "Are you a dead-bringer?" Snide laughter erupted from the mouth of the porcelain doll, followed quickly by mocking laughter from the woman herself. The sounds echoed from every corner of the room, seemingly coming from the very shadows themselves. Kira dropped the doll and stepped away, his back hitting something. Before he could react, sharp metal tips from a claw-ringed hand were pressed against his throat. Her deep voice whispered into his ear, "Would it please you if I was a dead-bringer?" Kira's mind swam, and he wondered if the claw tips pressed against his neck were poisoned. "Was she alive?" he asked desperately. "Did you kill her?" "Everything that is dead once lived," she said, "and everything that lives came from nothingness." That isn't an answer. Kira had wanted his words to have more bite, but his eyes were becoming too heavy to keep open. "But it is," said the woman. She brought her face mere inches from Kira's own, intently studying the outline of his mask. All amusement disappeared from her voice. replaced by leaden gravity and a hint of anger. You should not be here. What are you? What am I? Kira considered hazily. It seemed like a question he should have asked the moment the woman had first appeared, but fatigue claimed him before he could answer, and he collapsed. Kira felt the woman catch him. Through nearly closed eyes, he watched as if from a distance, as the porcelain mask concealing his face fell to the ground and fractured in two halves. Claw-ringed fingers brushed the hair away from his face and turned him over. Shock, bewilderment, a fading voice. Unable to make out her words, Kira let sleep take him and woke up.